growing doubt about whether Medupi will make the December deadline amid a 6-week labour dispute has put Eskom's ability to meet its obligations in terms of a secure supply chain in question. Eskom's looming supply pinch follows nurses' refusal to give the power utility the 16% increase it sought, instead granting it 8% per year until 2018. Joining me now to discuss the implications of the Medupi delay is Eskom spokesperson Hilary Joffe. Hilary, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, concerns are growing given the fact that we've got these hold-ups related to strikes at Medupi. The latest is that you've given an indication that workers there must be fired. Just give us a sense of Eskom's stabilization plans. How are you planning to get back on track given the fact that you've had these disruptions?
Karima, the workers are employed by the contractors on the site, and I'm glad to say that the return to work has actually begun. Workers were asked to come back by tomorrow, and many of them have already started to come back today. We urged contractors to expedite the return to work as soon as possible. They have sent SMSs to all the workers, and within a couple of days, we certainly hope that operations will be back to normal. That's the priority for now. Once we are back at work, we will sit down with the contractors on the site. We have asked them to look at the impact of the labour unrest and what plans they can put in place to mitigate it. And while it's certainly true that the labour unrest does pose a material threat to delivery, because the project's on a very tight schedule to deliver first power to the grid by the end of this year, we are still very much working towards meeting that deadline.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, as you said yourself, Hilary, a very tight deadline. What are the cost implications if you don't meet that deadline?
Look, I mean, in any big project, there are contracts, really complex contracts, which cover who's liable for what. Once we have got back to work and worked out what the impact will be, because as I said, it's really not clear to us or the contractors yet what if any impact there will be on the timelines. We will be looking at costs, but I don't think one should necessarily assume that they're for the account of one or the other. And we have obviously, in any large project and a project so complex, you do factor in a degree of labour unrest. But we will have to see what the impact of this rather long and often violent stoppage has been.
Mm-hmm. Now, the other concern, of course, is your capacity to deliver. You have set a series of actions in motions to ensure that you are able to keep the lights on. Take us through that, Hilary, and take us through how a delay at Medupi is going to be mitigated or ameliorated by, backup plans that you have in place.
Indeed, yes. Look, the units in Medupi are big units. It's a big power station. So each unit is 800 megawatts, which is bigger than a unit of one of our existing coal-fired power stations. So it's a lot of power. What we had said is that the first unit of Medupi would deliver first power to the national grid by the end of this year. So certainly that 800 will help to relieve a very tight power system. I think we've made it clear many times that the power system is tight and will be tight for some years still, and that we need to pull every lever we can get. So at the moment, it's particularly tight because we're missing capacity from Kuburg, which has one unit down, from Mozambique, which has some issues on the transmission lines to South Africa. Any extra capacity we can get will certainly be helpful and will help us to manage what is a tight power system. But certainly the power system is not going to suddenly be not tight because we get one unit in Medupi. So we had factored in that the next couple of years will be challenging.
Mm-hmm. I'm reading an extract here from a report in the Business Day. It says even if the supply problems are fixed, Eskom says unplanned outages are growing and it faces severely constrained supply going into the winter months that we have coming ahead in South Africa. Are we to get ourselves ready for power outages, Hilary?
We at Eskom are determined to avoid that fate, and we certainly hope that we can. But what we would certainly urge people to do is to work with us to avoid it. And we need all the help we can get. The system is very tight, and I think, as you've mentioned, the issue is the capacity on the system, which is being affected by quite high levels of unplanned outages, unplanned events on the system. What has been happening in the last few years is that in order to keep the lights on, we have often run our power stations harder than they should be. We have not managed to find the space to do the kind of maintenance we would like to do to make for a more reliable power generation fleet. And the result, I think, which we're seeing now is that the performance of those power stations is quite volatile. We would ideally like to do a lot more maintenance to make their performance more reliable. But for that, we need people to come to the party to reduce demand, particularly during peak periods.
Okay, final question, Hilary. You have, according to this report, instructed contractors to fire all employees who do not arrive for work tomorrow. Is that the final position?
I think that it's not really up to us to instruct contractors. We are not the employers of those workers, and the contractors are the employers. They are, however, following whatever disciplinary procedures are available to them in terms of the project labor agreement, to which all the unions and all their employers on site are signatories. So it's not up to Eskom to instruct labor relations on the site, but I think the employers and the workers will be following due process in terms of the project labor agreement.
Well, that's where we have to leave it. Thank you so much, Hilary Joffe, spokesperson for Power Utility Eskom.